Good morning, everyone. My name is Evan, and this is day 12 of Psalm a Day, which means we are looking at Psalm 12. We'll read through the whole psalm together, and then we'll make some reflections on the psalm as a whole rather than going through just verses at a time. So, for the director of music, according to Sheminith, the Psalm of David. Help, Lord, for the godly are no more. The faithful have vanished from among men. Everyone lies to his neighbour. Their flattering lips speak with deception. May the Lord cut off all flattering lips and every boastful tongue that says, "We will triumph with our tongues. We will own our lips. Who is our master?" Because of the oppression of the weak and the groaning of the needy, I will now arise, says the Lord. I will protect them from those who malign them. And the words of the Lord are flawless, like silver refined in a furnace of clay, purified 7 times. O Lord, you will keep us safe and protect us from such people forever. The wicked strut freely about when what is vile is honoured among men. Okay, so the psalm is a lament, which features, both points of crying out to God, but also confidence that he can overturn the situation at hand. And it seems that particularly this psalmist is oppressed. Not only are they oppressed, but they're alone from verse 1 and 2. For just verse 1. But the particular oppression that the psalmist is feeling is through words, through speech and words of those who seek to malign the Lord and malign his people. And it comes to a point in verse 4 when they say that no one can stop them doing what they're doing. And then the psalmist calls the Lord to arise, because it's the Lord whose speech is perfect and flawless. And the psalm finishes with a cry to keep God's people safe. And also a meditation that when things are upturned in God's world, that's when the wicked freely strut, according to the psalm. Now, a couple of things that kind of jump out at me through this. The first thing is, I think back to Genesis 3, to think about the upturning of God's creation by the dialogue between Adam, Eve, and the snake. And we note that, or even back in Genesis 1 and 2, it's the Lord's words which are the most powerful thing in that creation is seen at that point. It's the Lord's words which are his true authority. And so when we meet a character like the snake, whose words seek to deceive the Lord's words, the Lord's authority, we see that that's where evil really starts, in the way that the snake speaks and the way that the snake lies. And here we see a continued perversion of the wonderful gift that the Lord has given his people, speech, as people use it to boast and to flatter and to lie and to deceive other people. And so here's our first little implication point. In all of the things that we could do, the ways that we could sin against the Lord, perhaps we may think that, just telling a little lie or saying something wrong or not telling a full truth doesn't actually matter in the grand scheme of things, and not nearly as bad as stealing or adultery or murder. But when we think about the meaning of what is happening here, we take one of God's greatest gifts and we use it for evil, the same way that the snake does in Genesis 3. And so perhaps we ought to focus more on our speech and whether our speech glorifies God or is it used to boost us up. Thinking of the psalm as a whole, thinking through the New Testament, one is certainly reminded that This is something which Jesus certainly would have experienced when he came to walk among us, and we read about these stories in the Gospels that everyone is speaking against Jesus, and the Pharisees and the Sadducees come up against him, and they create lies about him, and they speak falsehoods about him, and they speak falsehoods about God as well. And so it seems at that point, for Jesus at least, that there is no one good, that there is no one that speaks God's good things, particularly amongst the nation that is supposed to belong to God. And a particular episode that we can think of is in the temple, where Jesus visits and sees just how it has been used for corruption, and used to actually rob the people who come to worship. And so he expels all of those people who are doing those things. We can imagine him praying this kind of prayer at that time. For us as well, we are persecuted, and there are people who will speak against us. If not here in our country, then you can definitely be praying for and looking for those people overseas who are persecuted. And we can pray the same confidence that the psalmist has in verse 7, that the Lord will keep us safe, and the Lord will protect us from these things. And what's more is the Lord will put an end to these things. The Lord will put an end to lying and deceit. And we certainly look forward to that day and how wonderful it will be. So just some things as we finish. Reflect on your speech. Is it used to glorify God? Do you have a problem with lying? Do you have a problem with manipulating to get what you want? And is there ways that you should perhaps reflect on how your speech could be used for the betterment of God's people and for the honouring of God rather than of yourself? And continue to pray for the persecuted church, certainly. And you can go onto websites like Voice of the Martyrs to find daily prayer points for the oppressed and the persecuted church. But also pray that we'll pray looking forward to the day when God will put an end to all the wickedness, and we'll be able to spend eternity together, enjoying God's creation as it was meant to be. Grace and peace to you all.